Hi, I'm Julianne Gadori, the Arts Education Coordinator for the New Hampshire State Council on the Arts.
And I'm Lisa Burke-McCoy. I'm the coordinator for the Creative Communities and Arts and Health programs.
This presentation is on arts education in New Hampshire, why it works, the impact on our economy, and what communities can do to increase support. First, we thought we would tell you a little bit about the State Council on the Arts. We are a state agency within the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, which includes all of the things that we like to say people love about living in New Hampshire and visiting New Hampshire. So these include things like state parks, forest and lands, the state library system, historical resources, and the State Council on the Arts. Through our budget, we steward a 50-50 match of federal funds and state funds. And we have the confidence of the governor and a bipartisan legislature as our grants budget was just recently increased significantly so we can share grants out in the community. We are now 5 months into fiscal year 20 and we have already distributed 120 grant awards to date, which includes over $812,000. And you can see this is spread out geographically across the state. Our public value partnerships and grants for community engagement strengthen our creative economy. They improve the quality of life through participation and local investment in the arts. These provide operating and project-specific support for a broad range of activities. And these include things rooted in healthcare, schools and education, and heritage and traditional arts. So you can get an idea of some of the organizations that are funded through these grant programs. These range from museums, professional theaters, symphonies, dance companies, to historical societies, town libraries, cultural heritage sites, and educational centers. We have an arts and health program which supports participatory arts activities which occur in health-based facilities. These promote an environment that is conducive to healing for patients, residents, caregivers, or clients. We included a list of our recent grantees in this program here. And through this program, we really try to focus on meeting the needs of underserved populations, which can include the elderly, people with disabilities, and people in recovery or with other mental health challenges. Our arts education program supports learning both in and out of school for artists in residence and community-based arts programs. And we also convene the field to provide professional development, including our recent conference that was held in Dover, Culturally Responsive Leadership, which brought together over 150 professionals in education, the arts, and healthcare. And the State Council on the Arts also runs the Poetry Out Loud program, which now in its 15th year, by conservative numbers, has introduced and deepened learning for over 120,000 students in the state, which has involved over 2,000 teachers and 7,500 volunteers. We have a Percent for Art program, which stewards 0.5% of the budget for any construction of a new building or renovation of a state-owned facility for the creation or purchase of new artworks so that the public that is using that new state facility can enjoy and experience artwork. This includes in Concord with the recent construction of the women's prison. Female inmates were given the opportunity to take ownership of their new space, and they were able to participate in artists in residence with positive street art. New Hampshire is also home to many craft, music, and dance traditions that make up the cultural heritage of people living here. These are arts traditions that may be lost if they're not shared from generation to generation among a community. So this program supports those cultural traditions like Abenaki beadwork, fly tying, stone wall building, dog sled making, French, Canadian, and Irish fiddling, Indian Bharatiyam dance, and many, many more cultural traditions.
So there are a short list of disciplines that tend to come to mind when we talk about the arts and arts education. And this can include things like theater, music, creative writing, dance, visual arts, media arts. Things we typically refer to as being part of the fine arts and that are usually part of school arts curriculum or can be part of school arts curricula. While these are at the heart of the creative economy also includes many additional businesses and careers that require arts education and training. So when we talk about the creative economy, we're talking about all of these things listed here, and we're also talking about industries such as architecture, advertising, marketing, and branding. We're talking about the design industry, and this can include graphic design, industrial design, landscape design, fashion design. We're talking about film and digital media of all kinds. We're talking about TV and radio, and we're also talking about software development. These are activities that can occur in the for-profit sector, and this would include artists who are small businesses. A lot of the activity occurs in the nonprofit sector. This is where the things we typically think of as the fine arts live. And then they can also occur in the public sector, and a good example of that is library. Libraries, of course, are repositories for books, which are a creative product, and they tend to be a central gathering place for creative activities. One thing I like to point out to people is that there's a persistent misunderstanding that art or the arts are a luxury or that it's something we can opt into or out of. But the reality is that art is everywhere. When we look at the entirety of the creative economy, we're talking about tangible things that we interact with every day that have required the employment of an artist or a member of the creative workforce in their design and production. So if you think about things like your cell phone, your car, the furniture you sit on, the clothing you wear, even the software you use on your computer, all of these things have required the active participation of an artist in their production. And we're also talking about experiences, and these can be high value experiences like going to the museum or the theater, or they can be something more mundane like sitting at home and playing a video game with your child, because video games require a whole host of artist participation in order to produce them and bring them to the public. So whether we realize it or not, we are all participants in the creative economy. And strong arts education and opportunities for arts practice in public schools is a critical foundation that prepares students to participate in these workforce opportunities. When we evaluate the strength of the creative workforce, we generally look at two things. We look at creative businesses and the people that they employ, and then we also look at people working in creative occupations. Creative businesses employ people in both creative and non-creative roles. So an example of this, for instance, here in New Hampshire, the Capitol Center of the Arts employs musicians and theater artists. These are creative occupations. And they also employ administrators, bookkeepers, concession stand workers, janitorial staff, occupations that are not creative, but because these people are employed by a creative business, we include them as part of the creative workforce. We also look at people who are working in creative occupations, which can be found in both creative and non-creative businesses. So just as the Capitol Center for the Arts employs concessions and janitorial staff, non-creative positions in a creative business, a bank might employ a graphic designer as part of their marketing department. So this is an example of a creative employee working for a non-creative business. We don't include the activity of the bank as part of the creative economy, but we do look at the production of that individual employee. Because there's so much overlap between these two areas, it's hard to come up with a specific number, a representation of how much of New Hampshire's workforce is connected to the creative economy, but roughly it's somewhere between 4 to 6% of New Hampshire's total workforce. One thing we do notice that there's a strong entrepreneurial trend in the creative workforce. We traditionally see across New Hampshire's workforce, we see about 14% of that workforce being self-employed. That number is 22% within the creative workforce. And what I'd like to emphasize here is how this underscores the importance of linking business skills with arts education training as part of arts education in order to ensure that creative workers are prepared to be successful in an entrepreneurial role. So when we take all of this into account, the creative workforce looks something like this. It's our rich tapestry of people working in creative and non-creative positions for creative organizations. It's people working in creative positions for non-arts businesses, and it's self-employed artists and creative entrepreneurs. And all of the activity of this workforce and the resulting revenue it generates is what we call the creative economy. And in New Hampshire, this produces an annual economic output of around $2.5 billion. That's 3.2% of our state's total economy. It's equal to the revenue contributed by New Hampshire's food and accommodations industry, just to give you a little bit of perspective. This does not take into account the economic spillover from the arts, by which I mean that when there is an arts event or activity held in a community and people are coming in from outside of that community to participate in that event, they're spending their money in other places in that community. They're going to restaurants, they're staying overnight in hotels, they're shopping in other retail establishments. And we know from an Americans for the Arts survey that that number comes to about $40 per person who's attending that event above and beyond the price of the ticket to go to the event itself. So we can talk all day about numbers, but it's really about community. It's really about people. And this model shows everything that contributes to a healthy community. And you can see right around 12 o'clock, a little sliver that belongs to artists. And while artists are a slice of the whole, anyone who works in the arts can tell you that we see artists forging partnerships and working within every single one of these segments every single day. And that's because there's something that the arts do uniquely well. The arts are really good at bringing people together in real time and space to participate in shared experiences. So here in New Hampshire, we see this, for instance, in the town of Peterborough, where their Committee for Children in the Arts brought in an artist to facilitate a lantern making project in the schools that brought a crowd of 800 people together in an illuminated lantern parade on a cold December evening. We see it in an activity organized by the Arts Council of Tamworth, where nearly 1/3 of the town's population helped to design and create a public mosaic mural for their 250th anniversary celebration that highlighted their town's heritage and depicted the places and spaces that meant the most to the community. We see it in the Elephant in the Room series, which is a statewide project of the New Hampshire Theater Project. And that project is using theater to create a safe space where people can share personal stories and conversations about topics such as mental health, substance use, and suicide. And it creates an opportunity for people to feel supported, to build awareness and empathy, and to reduce stigma around critical personal and public health issues. And finally, we see it in Arts in Reach. These are just a few of many, many examples. Arts in Reach is an organization serving teenage girls in the Seacoast, a majority of whom are referred in by their school guidance counselors. So what Arts in Reach does is it provides a safe space and builds community for these girls using art as the glue to hold this community together. In 2015, Arts in Reach conducted an alumni survey, which revealed many of the remarkable ways the program impacts these young women. And for the purpose of this presentation, I'd like to focus on two specific data points that tell us that these young women who have graduated through this program and are now young adults are now voting and volunteering at two to four times the state and national averages. And this is just one of many regional and national studies that document the tremendous impact arts participation has on civic engagement in our communities. Finally, I want to make you aware of the New Hampshire Business Committee for the Arts. So NHBCA has over 300 members, including artists, arts organizations, and non-arts businesses that include BAE Systems, Concord Hospital, Chinburg Properties, Fidelity Investments, prominent law firms, and many, many others. And their collective efforts promote bringing the arts into the workplace to enhance company culture and also support artists and arts organizations to help build vibrant, diverse, and prosperous communities, because they understand that quality of life in our communities is critical to attract and retain a skilled workforce. These organizations, these businesses also recognize arts education and practice as a critical part of preparing a skilled workforce to do its job, regardless of the specific occupations that those people are occupying. So with that, I'd like to turn the presentation back over to Julianne to talk about the impact of arts education on student achievement.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay, so now we have seen many examples of how the arts are building healthy communities, they're essential for our economy, and how the arts are really the basis for communication in our digital and global world. So we're going to share some research on why arts education is really important as a foundational element of pre-K through 12 education. So there was a Ready to Innovate 7 study which asked superintendents and business leaders how to ensure that the children of today are going to be successful in the workforce tomorrow. And 72% of business leaders said that creativity is the #1 skill they're seeking when hiring. But 85% of them said that they couldn't find that skill within the workforce. So the same study polled superintendents and asked which courses build creativity. And you can see above 94% of all superintendents surveyed said that courses in theater, studio arts, music all built creativity. What you're seeing here are some comparisons of high and low arts involvement among low socioeconomic status students. In the late 90s, James Catterall analyzed data from the National Educational Longitudinal Survey, which is used for a lot of different research studies across disciplines. This was a study of 25,000 secondary students over 4 years. And then in 2012, he looked at 3 additional data sets, which followed a group of students until age 26. He found that there were significant advantages for students with low socioeconomic status who were highly engaged in the arts, which included a higher percentage of students having gainful employment, earning an associate's degree or bachelor's degree, and as Lisa mentioned earlier with Arts and Reach, students with high arts engagement were 17% more likely to be civically engaged and volunteer. Students with an education rich in the arts historically have earned higher grade point averages and earned higher SAT scores. The more years of arts that students take, the higher their SAT scores on average. And these gains are true regardless of the socioeconomic status of the students. So when there are students that do come from that background, it helps to close the achievement gap when they're having, again, that high arts involvement. This study qualified high arts involvement as having 4 years in the arts, as opposed to low arts involvement, which was 1/2 year or less, which is what the state minimum education requirements are in New Hampshire. These same studies found that students involved in the arts were 4 times more likely to participate in math and science fairs, to be recognized for academic achievement, and to be elected to class office. These students in the study with low socioeconomic status and high arts participation only had a 4% dropout rate nationally, while the students with, again, that low arts, which is 1/2 a credit or less, had a 22% dropout rate. That research was part of a collection of 7 studies on the effects of arts learning, And the other studies, in addition to the one that we just shared, found many other positive benefits to the arts, including that the arts reach students with different learning styles. We know about multiple intelligences. They create a feeling of connection and cooperation between students, and that they create schools that are exciting places for learning and discovery, which we all know when students are excited, they're engaged, teachers are excited, engaged, the community is, it's gonna create more positive environment for learning. An exciting area in arts integration in schools in New Hampshire right now is with STEAM projects. STEAM really champions innovation by achieving competencies in each of the subject areas of science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics. STEAM frequently utilizes project-based learning, and it integrates multiples of these subjects into the same unit, which presents experiences for students that really mirror real-world challenges and applications. A research report that was released by the National Science Foundation in 2016 compared STEM learning taught through arts instruction and a control group that had STEM learning that was not taught through arts instruction. The study found that the group with the arts-based learning showed a large number of statistically significant increases in these leadership qualities, including creative and critical thinking, emotionally intelligent behavior, empathic listening, mutual respect, trust, transparency, and the ability to transfer the learning happened in the unit to other areas of academic, home life, and extracurricular activities. An even more recent study in 2018, the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine found, published a consensus study that found that there's promising evidence for the integration of the arts and humanities with the STEM fields. These positive learning outcomes may help students enter the workforce, live enriched lives, become active and informed citizens, including improved written and communication skills, oral skills, content mastery, problem solving, and the ability to apply the knowledge in real world settings. The report also affirmed that we really need to prepare students to solve increasingly complicated problems, which may require a shift toward integration within education, as opposed to teaching subjects isolated. So by now you're probably assuming that we're claiming that the arts are a panacea for achieving educational goals, but the reason why is that the arts as a communication tool and mechanism have been proven so effective that they engage these multiple learning styles and multiple intelligence of students. The arts include a holistic representation of the ways that humans communicate and interact in the world. So a few more areas that the arts really shine. Throughout CAST's training materials on universal design for learning, they encourage the use of artistic processes to reach all learners. Here in New Hampshire, as we continue to develop the performance assessments for our competency education, the arts have really been looked toward as a leader in this process, and the arts have been a leader in the growing understanding around the importance for project-based learning. We also know that the arts can play a really important role in social and emotional learning. The University of Chicago Consortium on School Research released their findings this past June that reviewed more than 200 studies on arts education spanning 6 decades. They evaluated evidence of the effects of arts education on social and emotional development in school, and they found a widespread belief that arts education contributes to adolescent social and emotional development. Specifically, that the arts allow students and teachers to engage with one another in a way that stands in contrast to a lot of other ways that regular academic instruction takes place. So what can you do to support arts education in your district, whether you're a community member, an administrator, a teacher, a parent? Well, first, this is a really great time to be supporting arts education because right now the K through 12 education standards are being updated from the 2001 curricular framework. So these will be ideally released in 2020, which means that it will be almost 20 years since these art standards were published, which if you can think about the vast difference in technology and media that is available to students, that the landscape for education in general looks very different. So to inform these new arts education standards, there were 7 public listening sessions, 445 survey responses, and this summer, teachers volunteered over 8 weeks, and they held 70 individual meetings. So over 8 weeks, 70 individual meetings were held in the 5 disciplines plus arts integration to inform the draft for the new standards. So as you're helping to identify needs in your district, please consider the arts, and here are some ways. You can attend arts events. It shows a lot to the students, to the teachers, to the staff when there's a lot of people there supporting it. Remember that the arts are a really great way to engage parents in the community together. If you're in the position as an administrator or a leader, you can ensure that the arts specialists in your school and community feel like an integral part of the school culture. This can be sometimes challenging. It can be challenging across school cultures when the specialists are not always the ones that are included in parent-teacher conferences, in planning meetings with other academic subjects, but also many arts specialists travel to multiple schools. So when they're engaging in a lot of different schools, they may not feel like they're part of any singular school culture. You also can support extended learning opportunities for students in your school. If your district has not moved from STEM to STEAM, that's a great place to start. You can allow for professional development in arts integration for all teachers across all disciplines, because again, the arts, music, dance, theater, visual arts are a great tool for communication and media design. And professional development in arts education is an allowable activity under Title I. We have seen a lot of success in schools that offer a common enrichment block or support a schedule where students don't have to choose between taking arts courses or AP courses. There's that common time where they can take the arts regardless of the structure of their schedule. Again, if you're an administrator, you can review the supply budgets for your arts courses to make sure that they're adequate. You can utilize the title programs to address needs using the arts, such as Title IV-A and B. You can use Title II or small, rural, and low-income achievement programs to address your identified needs. And also, you can creatively advocate for full-time educators, making sure your arts specialists are full-time. We know that many communities have to be responsive to the number of students that are taking each course, and therefore they may only have a part-time arts educator. But if you think about the integral role of the arts specialist as on a STEAM integration team, as part of social and emotional learning, enrichment, integration, you can more creatively advocate for why that role really needs to be full-time. So here are some of the resources that we cited in using these, developing this presentation. We'd be happy to email these to anyone who requests it. Here are Lisa and I's contact information. We would love to connect with you over the phone or by email. And we appreciate everything that you're doing in your communities to foster a really strong arts education program and provide access to youth. Thank you.